Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Fred Kemp, President and CEO of the Atlantic Council, and it's my huge pleasure to welcome His Excellency Edi Rama, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Albania, to the Atlantic Council. Welcome, Mr. Prime Minister. It's wonderful that you took time out of your busy schedule. We know you're seeing the President and Vice President tomorrow. We wish you well in that meeting as well. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to the U.S. Ambassador to Albania, Donald Liu. Welcome. Good to have you with us. And the Ambassador of Albania to the United States, Floretta Faber. Madam Ambassador, great to have you with us as well. We very much enjoy working with you. You have a very effective envoy here in Washington. Today's event is public and on the record. We'll be using the Twitter hashtag #EuropeForward, representing our Future Europe Initiative's effort to secure the strategic future of a strong Europe. Please join the conversation online. This conversation comes at a critical time for Albania and its neighbors. The migration crisis in particular has made clear that unity and security across Europe cannot be achieved without a stable, prosperous, and secure Balkans. In every crisis lies opportunity. We are watching what's happening in the Middle East very closely with our Middle East Strategy Task Force at our Hariri Center, co-chaired by Madeleine Albright and Steve Hadley. But what they've said more than anything else is that this is a crisis from the Middle East with global ramifications. And as I said, a crisis lies opportunity. This is an opportunity to galvanize again our efforts together for a Europe whole and free. And Albania has made significant strides through its commitments to NATO since 2009, its dedication to reforms leading to its EU candidacy status in 2014. It's a crucial piece of this overall puzzle. In addition to the recognition from NATO and the EU, the United States has acknowledged the enormous progress of Albania through the signing of a formal cooperation agreement, the U.S.-Albania Strategic Partnership, in April 2015. The United States proudly supported Albania on its journey to NATO membership and stands with Albania today as it seeks to complete its Euro-Atlantic integration. We realize the special responsibilities of Albania as a NATO ally. We look forward to its contributions at the Warsaw Summit as a young, ambitious country transitioning from a turbulent past and representing a determined force for the future. Since the signing of the U.S.-Albania Strategic Partnership, our countries have been on a road to deeper collaboration on trade, investment, energy security, and the fight against terrorism. On U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's first visit to Albania in February, he emphasized the Albanian leadership's working hard to deliver, and that your country is moving in the right direction. It was a powerful meeting with you, Mr. Prime Minister, and Secretary of State Kerry. Amid such great opportunity and positive momentum for progress through the strategic partnership and Secretary Kerry's recent visit, we recognize the challenges that Albania and the region still face. We also understand that for nations like Albania working relentlessly toward EU membership, that the headwinds are large at the moment, and not the least of which the recent Dutch referendum vote last week against the EU-Ukraine free trade deal. The Atlantic Council sees Albania as a key ally in the Western Balkans, and we want to give leaders from the region, and particularly yourself, Mr. Prime Minister, a platform to express their views and advance their goals with our transatlantic partners. To that end, we've intensified our efforts in 2016 on Adriatic Europe, a term here at the Atlantic Council, used here in the Atlantic Council in February by Albanian Foreign Minister Bushati, who I believe is here. It's great to have you here. And the Interior Minister, I believe, is also here. It's wonderful to have you here as well, sir. Where you said that this had to be part of the broader work to reanimate the vision of a strong Europe, or as we still like to call it, completing the job of a Europe whole and free. The United States and Europe cannot remain spectators to the challenges in the Balkans. The former president of Kosovo said at the Council in March, the moment has come when we need to act. In that context, we are honored to have Prime Minister Rama here with us to hear his vision. We're grateful for the Prime Minister's contributions as a keynote speaker of our annual Energy and Economic Summit in Istanbul this past November. And I have an invitation for you for this coming November as well. Alongside the Croatian president, he addressed the diversification of energy sources in the Balkans, the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, among other topics. The Prime Minister has had a distinguished career in the Albanian government. He's been chair of the Socialist Party since 2005 and steered the party through years of opposition until his victory in 2013 when elected Prime Minister. He led Tirana as mayor for 11 years, beginning in 2000. He first entered politics as the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports in 1998 and has worked to promote arts and culture in Albanian society. Some of you may not have known that Prime Minister Rama was previously painting professor and has participated in worldwide exhibitions as an artist. And while mayor of Tirana, he received international recognition for his projects to restore the vibrancy of public space, and I think it's still regarded one of the most colorful cities in the world and was even judged as such. Before I hand to you, I'm going to embarrass you just a little bit, Mr. Prime Minister. So we met, I believe, in 2006 in Lake Como at a German Marshall Fund event when I was the editor of the Wall Street Journal Europe. And shortly before then, there was an article in the New Yorker by Jane Kramer, a profile of you and what you were doing in Tirana. So I just want to take us back a little bit to set up his comments. The quote is, "It's safe to say that the Balkans has never produced a politician so beguiling. You see him everywhere, 6'6", 3-day beard, baggy black pants, funky black vest, red shirt, red socks, and the kind of shapeless black frock coat that East German clergymen used to wear. Rama is a Balkan original, and maybe the most original thing about him is he isn't really a politician. He is an artist who, you might say, took Tirana for his canvas." Ladies and gentlemen, his clothing has changed, his creativity has not, and the canvas is a much larger one. Mr. Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I might say that you touched the wound, because not being able to wear very often red socks is something I miss very much. So I'm very delighted to be here, and I want to thank the Atlantic Council and its knowledgeable staff for giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts about some of the most complex and pressing challenges of our time. A few weeks ago, we marked the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Albania and the United States. And by the way, I'm very happy and moved to see here among the audience some people that have played a key role in making of this diplomatic relations a very, very strong tie between the United States and Albania. And I was very happy to meet with the previous ambassador, Marisa Lino, not yet with the previous ambassador, Alex Arvizu, whom I want to greet and to thank very much for the presence, as I want to thank very much also the actual ambassador, Donald Lu, for being here. It's a mystery how he succeeded to be here and there in the same time. Because before coming here, I saw him in the news in Albania, just before, 1 hour before. Indeed, 20 years of outstanding relations, and during which the assistance of the United States has been pivotal, not only for Albania, but I might say for the entire region as well. If the countries of Adriatic Europe are nowadays at peace, working together to cope with big challenges of the time and with the refugee crisis as well, supporting each other on the EU integration path, transforming their political and economic landscape. It is in no small measure, to say the least, thanks to the engagement of the United States, and it is a big success story of US foreign policy. When, once upon a time, before attacking the dictatorship in Belgrade, Bill Clinton, jointly with Tony Blair, said that we are going to do so because we want Albanians and Serbs to live together, live in peace, and build a prosperous future. I might say it sounded like a very utopic statement. But here we are. It started there, and today it seems like it's centuries ago, not just less than 2 decades ago. Last year, we signed a joint declaration of strategic partnership with the United States, focusing on regional security, energy, rule of law, and good governance, with particular focus on the economy. And the reason for my visit here in DC this week is not only to follow up on the joint commitments we have taken last year, but also to discuss the progress that Albania has made in recent months related to our path towards the European Union, and to exchange views on the interests that the United States and Albania share as NATO allies in a challenging European security environment. And I would like to focus on Europe's security environment and how that impacts the transatlantic partnership as a whole, but also provides opportunities for a deeper and stronger cooperation. As you all know, the increasingly fragmented climate among EU member states over Europe's capacity to successfully overcome its current challenges has triggered some concern in the Balkans that other strategic issues, such as European Union enlargement, have now become secondary issues for the foreseeable future. In this context, there is a risk that the spillover effects of Europe's mix of economic, migration and security crisis could fuel further instability in the Western Balkans and bring more uncertainty to the south and east. Right now, migration is the #1 issue in Europe, both in terms of security and values. The response has been slow and confused, and I might say, if one would try to imagine that Angela Merkel would not exist, then the panorama would be much more gloomy, and the European answer to this big challenge would be far less dignified. Even as we speak, the phenomenon remains extremely disruptive for the region, not to mention the security concerns we all have. Another key concern in Europe is violent extremism. It represents one of the biggest threats peace and worldwide security have ever faced. The fight against violent extremism has triggered the most comprehensive action to defeat terrorism, not only by force, but also by eradicating its roots. And Albania is proudly, fully part of this effort, with concrete engagement at the global level, in the region and at home, as a committed member of the counter-ISIL coalition. Beyond our early and significant support to the coalition, we have taken additional measures to counter terrorist financing and to stop the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. And we are satisfied to say that last year, 2015, we had no one foreign fighter joining ISIL in the ground. Last November, after consultations with allies and partners, we adopted our national strategy on countering violent extremism. It brings together government, civil society, and religious communities to employ education and soft measures on preventing radicalization. The problem of extremism is not limited to one ideology or religion, just as radicalization. Violent extremism and terrorism based on religion are not a new phenomenon. But today we are confronted with ideas wrapped into a political project with a distorted interpretation of Islam. The only offer of the so-called believers of Daesh is suffering and death. The message terrorists have conveyed by perpetrating terrorist actions all over the world is that they can eat anywhere, anytime. Their philosophy aims to threaten our way of life, to endanger our achievements, and defy conventional state borders. The way we will work to counter their ideas, their philosophy, and their political project will shape in many ways our lives and our common future. So let me say that it's more and more clear that this is a long-term fight that needs to be fought for sure where ISIL is and where ISIL acts, but also need to be fought in the hearts and minds of people. First and foremost, in the hearts and minds of young people, of our young generation, to give them the tools to not be trapped when they have to be confronted with extreme sources of propaganda, being them sources from East or sources from West. Because what we are facing today is also a political radicalization in our societies that aim to play with the very notions of being Muslims, of being immigrants, and of being different. So unfortunately, like the rest of Europe and indeed the world, the Balkans have been affected, as they have been affected by the phenomenon of foreign fighters. So the anti-ISIL coalition countries have adopted different approaches, dealing with the former fighters returning back home. Dealing with Daesh requires force, but also a lot of intelligence. So as I said, we must defeat them militarily. We must destroy their financial machine. But above all, to win this war on terror, we must fight the roots of extremism, poverty, social injustice, exclusion, and discrimination all around the places. Albania is and will continue to stand to the side of the United States and our European partners in this struggle. Inside our borders, we have tackled the extremist danger in different ways. Confronted with the surprise reality of individuals joining the fight, we have first toughened legislation, strengthened the work of law enforcement agencies, and last but not least, we have benefited from the extraordinary support of religious leaders from all main faiths in our country. In May last year, we organized a regional summit on countering violent extremism. Last November, we adopted a national strategy, which we are now implementing. At the Leaders' Summit Against Violent Extremism, hosted by President Obama last September in New York, it was highlighted very clearly that while security measures deliver quick results, soft measures need patience, continuous work, and attention. One of these areas of priority, areas of importance, is for sure education. Those who are familiar with our reality know that we do have this incredible national asset, our tradition of respect, understanding, and tolerance between faiths, which was the base also of our very proud history of saving Jews during the Second World War, and of making Albania the only country in Europe where there were more Jews after the war than before the war. And mostly of them were saved by Muslim families. So we are proud to be a shining example of tolerance and religious coexistence. It has been so over centuries, and by all times and circumstances, and it has nurtured a society where people respect each other as equals, regardless of faith and cultural background. But we should not take it for granted. We should not see it like something that will be there, whatever we do or not do. It's time to act, and it's time to help our young generation to understand in depth how precious this example of Albania is, how valuable this community of tolerance and religious coexistence is, and what is at stake vis-à-vis the threats coming from all over the place to this very important national asset. So we think that age-appropriate information and an open discussion in the class will help provide our children and our youth with the proper knowledge to better resist hate based on religion, to refuse discrimination, and by this way reinforce our well-known social cohesion. We are setting up a dedicated center to build community resilience and diminish the breeding grounds for radicalization and violent extremism through tailored multidisciplinary programs. This is a concrete effort to protect our society, to preserve our social cohesion, but also to clearly differentiate between radicalization and extremism, which has nothing to do with religion. The nation is a struggle, but the fullness of the nation, as defined by Garibaldi from his humanistic convictions, is peace. Not victory, peace, permanent and irrevocable. The multiple crises Europe is now facing have highlighted a reinforced interaction, I would say even interdependence, between the European Union and the Western Balkan countries. Europe must transform the recent crisis into an enhanced cooperation with the Western Balkans. In this security environment, there is no questioning about the importance, even for a small country like Albania, to live up to its commitments. As per our pledge at the NATO summit in Wales, Albania has undertaken steps to halt the decline in defense spending and to reverse the trend. Our defense budget for 2016 represents a 12% increase compared to last year. The defense budget allocated for investments is also up from 11% to 20%, so as to ensure our ability to implement long-term plans and multi-year contracts. But we are equally aware that some things cannot be taken for granted. Indeed, the progress of a country in the Western Balkans is very much related to the stability and security of the region. So Albania remains a strong supporter of NATO's enlargement in the Western Balkans. We think NATO should institutionalize its relations with Kosovo in the near future. Albania will continue to support the NATO open door policy and, as Secretary Kerry has said, be a mentor to Balkan countries aspiring to NATO membership. Partnership with the United States has been an essential factor towards democratic consolidation and the economic prosperity of Albania, Kosovo, and the entire region. Thanks to United States support, Albania has played a dynamic and constructive role in the Western Balkans, and thanks to the United States, we are now anchored in regional processes that will allow, hopefully, enemies to become neighbors. Indeed, we are not yet a region, neither in economic, political, or security terms. That is why we need today the United States more than ever, as we need the European Union today more than ever. Because let me simply say a simple truth. We are today in the best political moment in our history as a region. We are today in the best place by developing cooperation, by normally talking to each other. 2 years ago, I visited Belgrade, 68 years after the last visit of an Albanian prime minister to Belgrade. We risked the third Balkan war because of a wrong football game. But we survived it. And then the Serbian Prime Minister came to visit, first time ever, Albania. And today, we can meet with no journalists around. And we can shake hands with no pictures and headlines in the newspapers in both countries, which is normality, which is a big achievement, and on which we need to build upon. So it's very crucial to understand that all this has come because of everyone being focused on the European integration perspective. And when it comes to the Balkans, to the Western Balkans, it's not about enlargement. It's about completion. And if 5 years ago we needed Europe more than Europe needed us, today it's fair to say that Europe needs Balkans, at least as much as Balkans need Europe. And for the same purpose that the anti-European forces are trying to tell why this completion should not happen, for a more safe and a more secure European Union. In 1952, American intellectual Reinhold Niebuhr famously said that the transatlantic community is not a unified culture, but rather a shared way of making diversity tolerable under conditions of freedom. Indeed, NATO is composed of nations who have discovered the way to community despite diversity. History itself entrusted the transatlantic community with joint tasks. 25 years ago, these tasks embodied the need to jointly shield from tyranny and ensure the welfare of our people on this side and across the Atlantic. To this day, the transatlantic community still shares those same needs, although the face of tyranny may have changed and welfare taken a broader meaning than the economic one. NATO membership has turned Albania into a pillar of stability in Adriatic Europe, a country which invests in the security and prosperity of our region, taking on, as Secretary Kerry stated, the role of mentor for countries aspiring to Euro-Atlantic integration. We are grateful to the United States of America, our strategic partner, and other allies without whose support our country would not have come this far. I know that I said it before and not once, but it's never enough to repeat this very basic truth. And I believe Albania has demonstrated it has the right approach and sensitivity vis-à-vis the challenges currently facing Europe's security architecture, as well as the effects that the situation in the east and south of Europe can have on our region. In the current geostrategic context, and as we brace for the upcoming NATO summit in Warsaw, Albania is committed to be part of the Alliance's efforts toward the fair distribution of the burden and long-standing shared obligations. This process is crucial for the reliability of the Alliance and the sustainability of our collective defense instruments. So, before saying thank you, I would like to end where my friend ended, with a colorful description of mine. So after this speech, you understand why I'm not so colorful anymore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. That was a very important speech. We'll definitely put this all up on our website. I think you have a unique perspective from where you're located geographically, your own personal background, and obviously being part of Europe and NATO. Let me pick up on a couple of the issues that you underscored. you talk about needing U.S. more than ever. You talk about needing EU more than ever. It's not about enlargement. It's about completion. Europe's need for the Balkans. You spoke of the multiple crises Europe is facing. From your standpoint, looking at these, but you also, which we keep trying to remind people of here as well, that this is one of the best moments of European history. I mean, if you look at the centuries before 1945, there's also great promise. So as you're looking at these multiple crises, drill down a little deeper. Which concern you in which way? So there's the challenge from the east, there's the challenge from the south, there are centrifugal political forces, there's economic growth forces, there's the British vote and referendum. From an Albanian perspective, where do you see the focus needs to be as one faces what you called the multiple crises of Europe?
Being small, it's not always a bad thing, because, for example, you don't need to lead. You simply need to identify the path and the leader to follow. So we have identified it, and we are firmly following the path of United States leadership, and also of EU leadership, if such a thing exists, which is not always clear, by the way. So, for example, if we take the EU in front of the refugee crisis, we have a very shining leadership in the Chancellor Merkel disposal to deal with the crisis without forgetting, but on the contrary, underlining the European values and European principles. But we cannot say the same for the for European Union as a whole. You know, we are watching things that are unbelievable in terms of how some EU countries deal with this matter, in terms of how some EU countries are even able to come out and say, yes, we welcome refugees, but they should be Catholic. Or some other EU countries simply dismiss every possibility to be part of a common project. So if I would have to answer shortly to your question, I would say the most disturbing part of the whole thing in such complex situation is the lack of a strategic Europe, European Union, you may say, because we are also Europe without the EU, but just the E, you know. We are for the moment E, not EU, but we are proudly E.
But the lack of a strategic Europe. Talk about then a strategic NATO. What role do you see Albania playing as a force for security in your region? And specifically, what will be your priority or priorities for the NATO summit in Warsaw?
Again, our challenge in that aspect is not very big, as far as we have identified the path and as far as we have committed to this path. So we are a proud NATO member, and we are always ready to join in every decision and in every initiative with our modest forces, but in the same time, we have always done and will always do it with all our heart and mind, because we strongly believe that NATO is a big force for good. And at the same time, this time, we are very, very satisfied of the opening up and the invitation to Montenegro it's a big thing, which will make the region stronger and more secure, because we have to not forget that for the first time in the last years, in the region, we have to face also third actors that were not there 5 years ago. Namely, ISIL and radical Islam from one side, and Russia from the other side.
As third actors from the south and from the east.
Third actors, very interested, and let me say, very strategic.
In both cases.
In both cases.
Let me also tip my hat to the ambassador of Montenegro who's here. Congratulations to you. And the ambassador of Serbia as well. It's wonderful to have you here as well. You're seeing the U.S. President, Vice President tomorrow. What are your expectations for this partnership? It's one thing to announce a strategic relationship, and then you have to fill it with meaning. What do you want out of the partnership? What's going to be most important in your meetings tomorrow?
First of all, it's very important the fact that we have now a common agreed document of strategic partnership on which we work together. And in the same time, although I'm tall, as you precisely mentioned, 6.6 foot, I'm always aware of the size of the country I represent. So I'm not pretending to let's say, change or impose anything, but simply what we, I think, rightly pretend is a permanent commitment of the United States to Albania and to the region, because, as I said, is a big success story that should not be spoiled. And it's a big achievement that on which we should build upon. And I'm very, very convinced that the fact that the United States are so much a key factor in this huge transformation, in this historical transformation of the Balkans, it's like a very, very big thing for us. On the other side, I think that we can do more, and we had a fantastic meeting yesterday with the General Administrator of USAID. We can do more on exactly the challenges of fighting, of countering extremism, violent extremism, but not only violent, by the way. Also extremism by itself, in engaging more in successful models on modernizing to fight corruption and to make the country and our countries a better place. So there is a lot to get from this relationship, and first and foremost in terms of knowledge. And last but not least, we are very, very interested to develop a relation that has started with the FBI to strengthen our security forces in terms of capacities of investigation, and to be more prepared to go after organized crime, corruption, and every type of illegal activity, which have harmed a lot Albania's aspirations during these 2 and a little bit more decades.
So if you were to list some of the concrete things, FBI cooperation, more cooperation in what we would call Homeland Security, USAID going after not just violent extremism, but extremism more generally. Any other concrete areas you would list as priorities? in the bilateral relationship?
As I said, we have also a very important aspect underlined in our strategic partnership, which has to do with energy security. Mm-hmm. And by the way, we are very proudly exposing our success story in the energy sector, which has permitted the country to get beyond the permanent crisis in the energy sector and to start and look for having an important role in the region. Now, with the interconnection with Kosovo and next with Macedonia, we will be able to have a more important role, but at the same time, we know that this is also part of this cooperation in this field with the United States government, as it is very important to work together on creating more opportunities for economic development and for foreign investment, American investments also, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. Let me turn to questions. Ambassador Khalizad, a prominent member of our board as well. Thank you.
Prime Minister, thank you for that very meaningful statement that you made. I wanted to seek your help in thinking about the part of the world that is really the Balkans of the world. Now, you made a very important statement in terms of the progress that the Balkans are making, the transformation that you spoke about. But we know that the Middle East, in terms of the extremism that you spoke about, a major driver is the problems or the crises of the Middle East. I wonder if you would reflect. I know that you speak in very humble terms, but I think it would be beneficial if you would reflect for us as to what is the lessons to be learned from the Balkans, the progress that you talked about, possibly for thinking about the longer-term future of the Balkans of the world, as I would call it right now, being the Middle East, or their lessons for U.S. diplomacy, for example. You've been very kind about the role that the United States has played very positively. I've evaluated it in your region. This will be helpful for many of us who grapple with the future of the Middle East. Thank you.
I have to say the question was not very generous to me, because it's really a very big question, tough question, and I have to frankly admit that my luck is to be the Prime Minister of a country that is part of a region where there is a stunning success story of U.S. foreign policy. So maybe one cannot say the same for your region. And it's not up to me to say how you can learn from this big U.S. foreign policy success story from me. It's up to, I think, people in Washington to never forget how fantastic this story is, and with what a sense of strategy it started, it was completed from an administration to another, and yet another one. And I think Western Balkans are the best platform to show the world that yes, it's possible. It's possible to have democracy, to have human rights, to have rule of law, to have regional cooperation in an area where there are Muslims, there are Christians, there are complicated people, you know. There are people that hate because they love because they hate, and so on and so further. And yes, in the same time, it's a success story that should not be spoiled. We should not take it for granted, because it all started when first the communist regime falls, and then when a big US president took the initiative to really start it. But it started in a time when our kids were too little to remember. So the risk that they take it for granted, the risk that what we have looks like, what everybody has is big, and the vulnerability is there. Because as I said, we are not better than our predecessors. We are same people, same Albanians, same Serbs, same Balkan guys, but we are lucky to live in a completely different situation and to have to do with public opinions that want Europe. So it was easy, or let's say easier than could have been before, for the leadership to say to their own people, listen, maybe our neighbors are not the best we could get, but we have to talk to them, we have to work with them, because we have a common goal. And we cannot be a European country, we cannot be a fully integrated country if we don't make peace. So now we have peace, but we need a peace worth living, as another big president of yours said. So to make this a peace worth living is very important, first, to prevent that Trumpism do not blow also the Balkans with the purposes of, with the easy purposes of, get rid of Muslims, get rid of immigrants, get rid of neighbors and whoever, and in the same time to build upon and make sure that as soon as possible the Western Balkans are part of the European Union project.
Thank you very much. Please, Mr. Ambassador.
Don Liu, the U.S. Ambassador.
There you go. Thank you.
Americans love basketball, Mr. Prime Minister. Is there something about having been a basketball player that helps you be a better politician? And I should note for everyone else, the Prime Minister has not only installed a full basketball court in the downstairs of the Prime Minister's office, he's now put a basketball hoop up in his office, and there are broken light fixtures everywhere to pay testament to the fact that he's actually playing.
So this is another issue I have to talk tomorrow with the president about basketball courts in the institutions, and about how basketball helps you to be a better one than the others.
Do a photo op of a shooting around with the president tomorrow. I think that would be a good move.
It's
There
is a lady waiting. You are not being gentle to the lady.
So we're not going to go to three-point shot metaphors, or but please.
I wore a red dress so you could see me. My name is Keita Kostricin. I'm from Voice of America, Albanian service. So you touched upon a little bit on Russia's influence. And sometimes when internationalists talked about sphere of influence, Balkans are left aside. I wanted to have your take on how is Russia trying to influence the area, the region, and what kind of implication does this have? And another question, Albania and the Balkans are very important in the region, but countries in the region, including Albania, have had some lingering issues from the transition in terms of political climate. How important this is, you think, in terms of tackling these international issues around the world? Thank you.
So first, I can simply say that there is a more active approach of Russia in the region. There is a clear attempt to connect and to be influential. I would not say it goes for all countries the same, but in some of the countries this is becoming more than obvious. On the other hand, yes, we have to face, as countries in the region, a challenge that has to do with our past. And I would simply connect it with the pace of integration of former communist countries. It's very interesting, in my view, to see that the pace of integration of foreign communist countries was defined by their past. Countries like Poland, like Czech Republic, Slovakia, to say the very first, that joined Europe faster, were countries that had an easier time to reconnect with their own past in terms of institutions, in terms of academia, in terms of religious networks, and so on and so further. Then, if for Romania and Bulgaria, that were the last and that are somehow treated like the black sheep of the integration process, the process was tougher because the reconnection with the past was tougher, because the state and the institutions and the networks that make a country live in an organized community were much weaker. Now, let alone the Western Balkans. So the past is not, so if for Poland going and getting to Europe was somehow going back home, for us, getting to Europe is going somewhere we have never been in terms of institutions and in terms of organized networks. And this is also connected with the challenges. If we have more obvious challenges in terms of, let's say, fighting with corruption or fighting with some lack of will to abide to the law and so on, it has to do with our lack of modernization. So we need to modernize. More modern the countries, less space for endemic corruption and more evident rule of law. In terms of political climate, we are in Washington. It's not the place at least I feel embarrassed when I think about our political life, because I think that if there is nothing to learn in Washington, there is nothing to learn about how parties get together for the good of the country, to be frank. So this is something we can't learn in Washington, because no Republicans and either Democrats can tell us how much they love each other and how ready they are to join for bigger purposes. So we know I'm not proud of our political life in terms of how confrontational, how personal it gets. But when I need to not feel alone, I just switch to Fox News or to CNN, and so I feel in a better place. So.
Yeah, we're also going somewhere where we've never been before.
So kind of, I don't know if we are Americanizing or you are Albanizing in terms of political life, but we are going in the same direction somehow.
Sadly, we can only take one more question. So I think we have to show a preference here. So please, I'm turning to the Prime Minister's.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry, this will have to be the last question out of respect for your time.
Okay,
Please.
I feel honored. Welcome.
When people want to get rid of me, they say, out of respect for your time, we have to end.
Welcome, Prime Minister, to Washington, D.C. My name is Borjana Sako, and I'm a proud member of the Albanian community here. I wanted to direct a little bit your focus in fighting radicalism internally and focus a little bit more on the opportunity that Albania has to present a model and tying that with socioeconomic development. So can you speak a little bit more about what Albania is doing in terms of, you mentioned education, seeing education as an opportunity to build in a soft way, help shape the spirits of youth and fight softly radicalism internally? Because I think that's very interesting, and I see that as a model for other nations.
Thank you for the question, because it helps explain something that may be misunderstood, basically at home, because factually outside is very well understood and is very much supported. By the way, we had a very interesting conversation with the General Director of USAID, Gail Smith, about how we can work together on that. It's very simple. Let me say to you how simple it is. There is a terrorist attack. There are many innocent people butchered in the middle of Paris. And then there are some people coming out and saying they were Muslims. And these people that are coming out and saying they were Muslims, then they go on by saying, that's why we need to close the borders. That's why we need to not allow Muslims get citizenship, and so on and so further. And suddenly, the polls of the week show that these people have got more support. How it comes? How, in a so civilized, in a so cultivated, in a so shining place as Paris, these people can get more support? And to say it till the end, because it's like impossible to keep it. How? Donald Trump can be someone that possibly will be the nominee of the party that nominated Ronald Reagan. And then you realize that there is a big gap of knowledge. And there is a big space where ignorance, lack of knowledge about simple, basic notions of faiths and of the faith of the other has created a fertile ground for this kind of politics, for this kind of radicalization. And then it goes in a chain effect, because radicalizing in these terms from inside give more upper hand to them on the enemy side, because afterwards there are more Muslims that feel offended, that feel frustrated, that feel alienated, and that if they have never believed before that they would have something to say or to do against the country they start to think about it. So it's like a chain effect. And where it comes from? From ignorance, lack of knowledge. So, and then it's not possible to fight it with the very generic, charming purposes of democratic principles, respect for each other, and all the rest that in that theme sounds like a blah blah blah. So it's much more effective to give to people the tools to not be fools when they hear about Muslims, when they hear about Christians, when they hear about holy books, when they hear about prophets, but to simply have some instrument and say, wait a minute, it's not so easy. You don't get me by telling me that because there were some terrorists from a Muslim country, I have to hate Muslims as such. So, I don't know if I was clear.
Yeah. And I think this, education element of this I think we want to pick up on as well, and so we'll have that discussion with you further as well, because I think it's actually a crucial part of it. Mr. Prime Minister, this has been a terrific session. The on-record speech is a very important one, and I think we'll circulate that widely, because I think it really is thoughtful and
if you don't, VOA will do. We have a Leslie Berra here.
yeah, I think they
Our big hero of free information, because I have to end on this note. You know,
yeah.
There are the United States, but it was VOA the first, before the United States, like the first, to come in the country illegally and to help us connect with the United States. This is the man.
Well,
Leslie Berra.
let's end on that note. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you. This was a terrific session. We really appreciate it. Appreciate your leadership.